Welcome back to the Erica Show. The Erica Show introduces builders and leaders in the blockchain space, and today's episode is sponsored by TZ Ventures, the Tezos Combinator. TZ Ventures provides support to startups building on Tezos. So for more information, please visit the website www.tz.ventures. And today I invited the famous Arthur Breitman, co-founder of the Tezos project. Arthur, it's good to see you. Hi.
Thank you, Erica. Hi, how you doing?
Good. And it's been a long time since we last met. And 2020 was a crazy year. And how have you been doing? I mean, it's been a long time. So how are you right now?
I'm good. Well, I'm in good health, which is probably the most important in a year of pandemic. My family is in good health, so I'm pretty grateful for that. But it's been, of course, I think a crazy year for everyone.
Definitely. And, I think there's been many changes. So we're going to talk a little bit on that as well and the development on Tezos. And before we go deeper into the topics, for those who are new to the space, could you give us a short introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I studied mostly mathematics and physics and computer science. In my early career, I worked in finance. I was what you'd call a quantitative analyst. So I built statistical models for markets, especially high frequency trading and market making. I did this at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and a few hedge funds. And then for like a little more than a year, I worked at Waymo, working on self-driving cars. So Waymo is a self-driving car division of Google. And in parallel to all that, I had a passion project, which was Tezos, a cryptocurrency built on an open source and decentralized blockchain. And of course, Tezos grew and grew in importance in over the years. And it started attracting a lot of interest in 2016. Finally, the chain launched in 2018, and I've been involved in the Tezos project pretty intensely since.
Yeah, it is one of the biggest projects in this space, and it's been here for a while. And most people know about it. But for clarity and for non-crypto natives, could you give us a short, description of what the project is about?
Sure. So outside of Tezos, there are two schools of thought for cryptocurrency. One is that the protocol should never change. Once you set a protocol, you can never change it, because if someone has the power to change it, then someone has the power to corrupt it. And so protocol should be incorruptible, never change. And you have another point of view, which is that no protocol should change, and we'll just have the developers send us a new version of the code, and we're just going to run that. And I don't like either versions. And what Tezos does is you do have innovation. You're not going to be stuck with whatever technology was the best technology at the time where you created the protocol, but you're also not going to be highly dependent on some centralized entity telling you, hey, here's version 2, just run that. And you sort of have to run it, otherwise you just get left out of the network. Here, every proposal that happens on Tezos is submitted to the network. It's formal, it's not some sort of fleety proposal. The proposal is a piece of code, and people can verify that piece of code. They can inspect it, and they vote. So anyone who's holding Tez, which is a cryptocurrency for Tezos, can participate in creating blocks. It's a proof of stake blockchain, but they can also participate in deciding whether or not the upgrade is a good idea. And Tezos has already upgraded 5 times. So typically, protocol upgrades have been named after cities. So there's been Athens, Babylon, Carthage, Delphi, and right now there's a pending protocol upgrade, the 5th one, which is Edo.
It was named after cities. No wonder. I was like, this sounds familiar. Oh, Delphi, right? So Edo. I was just gonna ask about that. So there was the adoption of Delphi, and then another Edo is on the exploration phase. Is that? Yeah, and what does this update entail, and what does it enable? And also, there's Florence as well, I assume. So, could you tell us about what it entails?
So the latest upgrade was Delphi, and what it entailed was primarily a reduction in the cost for running contracts. So you can run more complex transactions, you can deploy more complex smart contracts. That was one of the big changes in Delphi, or Delphi. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. In Edo. Even bigger changes. there's integration of some zero knowledge proof systems, which can be useful for a lot of things. They can be useful if you want to build voting systems. They can be useful for scalability. So there's a layer 2 solution called Boat Labs, which is using some of the primitives that we're putting in Edo. And also, if you also want to have some sort of privacy preserving transactions. So there are many things which you can do with this technology. The chain itself doesn't do anything directly. We're basically presenting the technology, and smart contract developers can build different kinds of smart contracts using the tools which are at their disposals. And the other big change in Edo, of course, is something called tickets. So tickets is really useful if you're a programmer, if you're a developer and you want to build an application. So what's really great on smart contract platforms like Tezos is that you can have contracts talk to each other, you can communicate. So if someone writes a decentralized exchange and then you write a lending platform, maybe you can connect the lending platform to the decentralized exchange. And it's easier for contracts to talk to each other using tickets rather than messages. You can think of a ticket as like a message that's been signed, but instead of being signed by a user, it's signed by a contract. So it's a generalization of signed messages by contracts. Very useful primitive. You have to be a developer, I think, to see the benefits of it, but it makes life a lot easier for them.
I see tickets. Oh, I like the terminologies that you make, like bakers. Oh, and you know, Tezos has a very unique economic model in which like the total number of tokens is unlimited, and there is permanent inflation in contrast to Bitcoin, for example. Could you explain like the reasoning behind this model?
Sure. And so first of all, the current Bitcoin protocol is set to stop at 21 million. Protocols can change. The only guarantee you have with Bitcoin that it's going to stop at 21 million is a social guarantee. It's not a mathematical guarantee. If everyone who uses Bitcoin starts using a different protocol, you know, you can say, well, I don't accept this protocol and I will run the old one. Well, it doesn't matter, because if everyone accepts that the other one is the one that matters, you're screwed either way. So I'm not saying it's a weak guarantee, by the way. I think cultural and social guarantees can be super, super strong. And there are very, very strong cultural guarantees again around this in Bitcoin. But it's important to remember that it's not enforced by mass. It's enforced by cultural norms and social norms, primarily. It's enforced by people. You know, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is what people say it is. And there's no bypassing that. All right, so why does Tezos have inflation? And you think inflation, especially to look at the details. So in proof of work, when you have inflation, so for example, Bitcoin is about 2% inflation now, and they use that to pay for the security of the network, but most of that is being burned as electricity. So those 2%, they're costs that spread to the entire network. Now it's very fair, because unlike, you know, if you have fiat currency inflation, some people, the first people who get the money, and that can be the government or the financial system, get the money first, and so they can benefit, and people who are far can lose. But with proof of work, it's equal, but everyone loses. So, you know, it's like, it's a cost for everyone. Now you get something out of it, you get security, but you still face this cost. With proof of stake, you might have a high inflation number to incentivize people to create the blocks, but you also get the staking rewards. So you're not diluted as much. If Bitcoin inflates by 2%, you get about, but people typically get about 6%. So if you get diluted by 5%, but then you get 6%, it's actually 1%. Right? So you have to look between and a staking reward. And some people, they only look at the staking reward and they say, oh, it's great, you have 6%. And I'm like, no, hang on. You know, some of this is dilution coming from inflation. And some people, they only look at the inflation and they say, oh, that's terrible. It's 5% is so high. And you say, well, yeah, but it's you know, there's also the staking reward you get. So you have to look at the difference between the two and the balance between the two. And this will tell you if it's really inflationary or deflationary. So even though there is, you know, no limits to the amount of tokens, if I have this token and I bake, the fraction of the network that you own if you participate in securing the chain. If you participate in securing the chain, the fraction that you own stay constant or even increases. So it's less, in a way, it's less costly and it's less inflationary than proof of work because you're not consuming all these resources to secure yourself.
Oh, I see. Wow. And, there's so many topics that Tezos that are now present in literally every blockchain that Tezos already tackled, which is like governance, self-update of the code, proof of stake, of course, and formal verification.
Yeah.
All these big topics, right? And I mean, you cannot really touch everything, but then can you explain like why these topics are relevant and crucial? Maybe proof of stake, that would be an easy start.
Wait, sorry, come again? Governance?
So there's governance, self-update of the code, proof of stake, formal verification. So there's like 4 very big, topics, right? And maybe you can just choose one and then, kind of say like why this is crucial.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I say these are typically the 3 pillars of Tezos, which are the governance aspect, and we've just talked about that.
Yeah.
Proof of stake. Again, we touch upon it. Why proof of stake? And there's so many benefits to proof of stake. One is that it's less inflationary than proof of work. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because there's so many people in the Bitcoin camp who are like, I'm in Bitcoin for the hard money. It's hard money. Well, you know what? It's actually inflationary if you have proof of stake. And somehow they imagine that if you have like heavy machinery and like lots of electricity and maybe, you're even drilling in the ground, I think you should start a cryptocurrency where you have to move big rocks. Because people will say like, well, that's really hard money because there are heavy rocks involved. You actually get like something that's less inflationary with proof of stake. I think the recovery for attacks in proof of stake is better than proof of work. If someone manages to control 51% of the hashing power, they control, they own your network. In proof of stake, if someone does an attack, you can slash. That means you can remove them from the network. They lose their tokens, which is like an extremely deflationary event. So, attacks on proof of stakes are deflationary. It's fantastic, and you can actually get rid of the attacker and resume. So I think the security properties, the resistance to attacks is much better in proof of stake. The cost is much better. And one of the things that attracted me to Tezos was to see how much reluctance there was in Bitcoin in doing anything with proof of stake, to be honest. And the third part is smart contract and formal verification. So Tezos is first and foremost a cryptocurrency. I think there are people who look at smart contract platform and think they're not cryptocurrency and say, well, there are cryptocurrencies and store of value which don't have smart contracts. And then there are smart contract platform which are only for applications. And so by all means, Tezos is great for applications. I think if you want to build applications on Tezos, it's great. But the applications exist because it makes a cryptocurrency more useful. If you can use your cryptocurrency with some application, it makes it better. The cryptocurrency does not exist for the application. The application exists for the cryptocurrency. I think that's a very different mindset that what is prevalent in Ethereum. Now, if you write applications in a smart contract, typically you're going to have maybe hundreds of lines of code, maybe 1,000, but each line of code is super important. If you have a bug, it can be extremely costly. We've seen hacks to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars on Ethereum. And I think it's very, very hard to avoid mistakes in software programming, and no technique is foolproof, including formal verification, but it is still the best technique we have. So it's not perfect, but it is the best thing. It is the best thing that's known to this date, and it involves making mathematical proofs about your programs. And what we've tried to do is that programming languages in Tezos is make it easier to actually write those proofs, to make it easier to reason about contracts. And that, I think, is one of the benefits of deploying on Tezos. Now, it doesn't mean that you cannot make a bug. It doesn't mean that no Tezos contract is ever going to get hacked or is never going to lose money. I think that can and that will happen. But at least we're giving people the tools to make it as safe as possible for them to do that.
Right. I think one of the impressions that I got from Tezos was that you're well prepared and you're in terms of like tool sets and like developer applications. So yeah, that was an impression that I got. And what would, speaking of applications, right? What would Tezos be most fit for? Like in terms of, I don't know, applications or any type of areas, purposes, etc.
I think anything that it's an open platform. So anything that people want to build that you can build on blockchain with smart contracts, I invite them to build on Tezos. And I have in my mind some applications which I think will be more successful in the blockchain space, but I don't hold all the answers. And if some people disagree, I think that's great, and they should build it, and they should build it anyway, right? So the type of applications that are the most promising are financial applications, anything which has to do with securitization on a chain, so tokenization of assets, including stocks, including bonds. I think that's a big one, and all the financial primitives that go with it. That might be building derivative agreements between people over these assets. That could be lending. That could be insurance, peer-to-peer, decentralized insurance. I think is super interesting. It might also be payments. I think it's been underexplored in this space, even though cryptocurrencies were built initially. A lot of the aspect was focused on payment, and I think that's gone a little away. So for me, these are very important use cases. I also like video games. And again, I'm a little peculiar here. I think if you just take an item in a video game and represent it as a token, that's not super interesting. You have to actually add value to the game with the chain. And so any game that has a trading component in it, like collectible card games, for example, have a trading component to it, are interesting. So those are for me the ideas, but there's other applications like identity, tying into social networks. There are many things that people are building with blockchains. I've mentioned the type of things where I like focus more on personally, but all of these other applications are also welcome on the chain.
Of course. And, I think Tezos was once called the Ethereum Killer. And that was like the headline of some of the articles.
But that's hilarious. Who called, the people who call the Ethereum Killer are the, it's people from East Trader. It's like, it's Ethereum people who do this. And it's like, it's the most dishonest thing in the world. They say like, oh, well, this so-called Ethereum Killer. Well, who called it an Ethereum Killer? I mean,
they made it, I guess
I'm not saying it's not, the point is not, it's like, who creates a product and then tries to position himself based on their competitors? Like, no. Like, sure, I see some problems with Ethereum and I've been vocal, but I'm not, and also I think that it's a winner take all markets. And so I think to a large extent, yes, these platforms are competing directly with each other a lot more than people assume. There are a lot more competitors than they are complementary. But it's people from like Reddit. It's like /r/EastTrader. There's the one who's like, oh, this is Ethereum killers, and like, oh well, you said it was an Ethereum killer. Like, no, you said it was an Ethereum killer. Like, but it's great. Like, Tezos lives rent free in the minds of like of like the people on like the Ethereum social media. They obsessed over Tezos, and I love it when they do.
It's kind of like a PR for Tezos in a good way, I guess, sometimes. And it makes the headlines.
It's great. I mean,
yeah. you don't even.
If the Ethereum people keep bringing S killer, I think it says more about like their own insecurity than it says about the product itself. But
yeah, well, there are reasons for that, and marketing is probably one of them. And DeFi has definitely been, DeFi NFT has been, they were like the topics of 2020, and a lot of them are still built on the Ethereum ecosystem. And what's your opinion on the Ethereum based DeFi ecosystem and projects? And
so until recently, I would say I love DeFi. Decentralized finance is what it's about. And when you ask me about the best use cases, I've mentioned financial use cases, and I would say anything that's financial and that's decentralized is DeFi. But the word has come to mean something completely different. And so what people called DeFi last year and what people call DeFi today is completely different. So if you ask me last year, do I like DeFi? I would love it. And for me, DeFi at the time, what was it? It was MakerDAO, Compound, Augur, prediction market is decentralized finance, synthetic assets, all this type of stuff, really big fan of. But it's come to mean something completely different. So now what it is a form of gambling, but the rake is much larger. And instead of the rake going to the house, the rake goes towards burning coal. because yes, Ethereum, despite all its marketing, Ethereum is still a proof of work chain. And so here's how it works. They did this thing, which is a clever idea, by the way, called liquidity mining. And it's a clever idea when you have some valuable token behind it. But if you don't, it's kind of circular and meaningless. So they will say, I'm going to create a new DEX, and that DEX is going to have a governance token. And the governance token for that DEX is going to be a potato. Okay, so you have your potato coins. And who's going to use the DEX? Who cares? What does this why is this governance token valuable? Who cares? There's a DEX. And then they will say, okay, we'll build an automated market maker on chain. And they use typically a constant product automated market maker. So something which was invented by Uniswap. So they will have this Uniswap contract, and they say, if you provide liquidity for the potato token, we're going to print more potatoes and give you more potatoes. And so some people do that, and they say, that's great. I'm earning 20% on my potatoes. And on top of that, there's a liquid market to sell my potatoes because everyone is providing liquidity. And then at some point, everyone sells their potatoes, and the potatoes are worth nothing. And you had a bunch of cycles like this that happened with governance token over liquidity tokens, over all of this. And I think a lot of people had fun and it generated a huge, because there's two reasons why it creates large fees. One is that, well, it takes a lot of the bandwidth of the chain to process that. But the second thing is, in many cases, these contracts, you kind of like leave money on the table, in a sense of like the first person who can call a contract at the beginning of a block can make some money. So the people who gamble with these contracts, they lose money to whoever is able to call the contract first. And people compete very intensely to capture this money. And so they do so by producing larger and larger fees. So a lot of the large fees that you see, they don't really represent usage. They represent how much people are willing to lose to while gambling on these products. So, I'm not here to throw the stone. If people want to gamble, people might gamble, but they don't call this like DeFi, or don't call this a future. It's fun, but like it's not producing something very constructive, as opposed to the other projects that I mentioned earlier. I think MakerDAO is doing something real. I think Augur is doing something real. I think Omen is also doing something real. Compound, but not like Potato Coin.
It definitely has been on the riskier side for sure in the later 2020s, 2020. It definitely has changed a lot. And the Tezos ecosystem has grown so much over the years, right? And, what would you say is the current status of Tezos, like in terms of, I don't know, the ecosystem? What are some things that are, some meaningful players in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So it's a decentralized ecosystem. So that sometimes can confuse people, because they say, "Oh, what is the Tezos team doing?" And well, there's no Tezos teams. There's a bunch of different teams. There's a bunch of people working on it. I would say one of the main development is that the developer tools for building application on Tezos. I think it's one of the things that was one of the main laggard in our ecosystem, and it's something that really came together, I would say, a few months ago. So the ability to build an application in a web page and interact with it, that's always been there. But to use to have access to good libraries to do it, good extensions to do it, good wallet support, and not just do that from the command line. That's some things that really came together recently, and I think it's been one of the most important developments. It's also come with a lot of work on the optimization of the smart contract engine. So the smart contract engine initially was built for the type of contract you might see with Bitcoin script. If you want to think about Michelson, the language of Tezos, you can think of, what if we took Bitcoin script and we made it purely functional, we added static types, and we made it Turing complete. And then you get something like that. And it's great if you want to like manually build a small multi-sig contract, manually build a hash time lock contract, a social recovery wallet, even something like as simple as Uniswap. These things are very easy to write, and you can write them even manually directly in the language. That's what it was built for. But since this was conceived, there's been demand for more complex application, like heavier code bases. And so that's led the development to high-level languages like SmartPy and Lego for Tezos. It's led to libraries, so it's some, and also optimization of the interpreter, because if you are running much larger contracts, then you start needing more performance, and that's that's what the impetus for the 4x improvement in Delphi was, and there are even bigger improvements coming to the speed of the interpreter.
Oh, and one of the things that I found really impressive, I guess surprising and in a good way, was that, Forge, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, correct me if I'm wrong. So Forge is a startup launched by, I'm very bad at French. Okay, you can pronounce it. Yes, General, right. I tried. Has selected Tezos for its central bank digital currency experiment, and that's a huge deal. And I know how big that bank is, and so congratulations on that. And how will the team or the Tezos ecosystem contribute to the project, and what does it mean for Tezos in this collaboration?
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I know about as much as you do about this, because I read the press too, and I know that. So like the team behind this, by the way, is a Forge team. So there's the one building this on. There's the one primarily building this on Tezos. I know that they have contacts with Nomadic Labs, which is a team in Paris working on some core development in Tezos and some application development. So I know that Nomadic Lab is involved and helping them out. But I think the bulk of the work is being done by Forge. And that is pretty much all I know.
It's very decentralized as well. So
I know that it has to do with CBDCs, and I know that it's built on a Tezos public chain.
Right.
And that is like the extent of my knowledge at this point.
Oh, I see. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about in South Korea as well relating to CBDCs, and there's this big bank in Korea called Shinhan Bank, and it announced recently that they were getting prepared for CBDC as well. So, I mean, from your perspective, do you think like CBDC are important to the ecosystem? If so, like, why would it be important?
Because my internet connection is unstable, so maybe just give me 1 second. Okay.
I think you're back.
So,
yeah.
First of all, like, currency is already digital
Right.
in the sense, like central bank currency is already largely digital. So what is the big difference between CBDC and the old system? And I think the main difference with CBDC is the central bank giving more direct access to the ledger using a cryptographic ledger, as opposed to something that I think by using cryptographic ledgers, they can invite more people to contribute to it. Not necessarily people directly. It could be just bank, but even just banks, it's a lot easier to identify messages. So I think it can speed up interbank transfers. I think it'll happen one way or another. I don't know if it's going to happen on public blockchains. I don't know if it will happen on private blockchains. It might not even happen on blockchains at all. There are other type of ledger solution that they could be using, but it will exist in one form or another. I think the old technologies for money transfer between banks and central banks are pretty slow and they're not as performant as the type of things that you can build with cryptographic tools.
Right. And I think in terms of the CBDCs, there's like China. I mean, all these countries are exploring the idea. So I guess it may be helpful to, I guess, promote blockchain in a way, but it may not be directly related, as you said. So just curious about your idea, since you worked in banking as well. So and
I work in banking, but I worked on the the market making side, the trading side. I didn't really work on like the banking part of the bank, which is the fundamental activity of banking is like holding customer deposits and lending them out. That is fundamentally what banking is.
Yeah, very different, I guess. Yeah, different fields.
Oh, I have never been from interest, but that's how I do it.
No worries. And in a previous interview, you said that the term dApps are
Yeah.
quite overvalued and, evaluating a platform. And I found that very interesting argument. Well, I mean, yeah, I also agree to some extent. And then if that's the case, then what do you think is crucial for like for example, layer 1 project to prosper in the longer run? Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my reasoning on dApps, and that's even more true of dApps which have like coins attached to them. My skepticism comes from the following: if you have a good or a service, the more the demand for a good or a service increases, the more its price increases, and the more its price increases, the more demand for substitutes increases. So let's say that everyone decides that they want to eat tomatoes. The price of tomatoes starts increasing because there's more demand for tomato. The supply will also increase, but it won't be the most productive tomato farms. Now you'll open some tomato farm which produces at a higher price. So the price of tomato increases, but at some point, some people say, well, I really like tomatoes, but now I'm going to start eating cucumbers. So you have some elasticity due to the substitution effect, okay? And when you're a company and you produce a good, you're not going to produce a good at maximum capacity. You're going to produce at the capacity which is profit maximizing. And if you have a lot of competition, then the price of the product will fall towards the cost of production. But it's not. But you still have a lot of things. You have like trade secrets, for example, that can protect you. You have internal capital that you've built, know-how. There's a lot of things that allow companies to charge a margin. Now imagine that you're not a company at all, but inside you're some sort of like the open source decentralized protocol that everyone can access. Why are you getting any kind of margin? Why are you attracting any of that? And it's not because you have any special know-how, because all of it is open source and can be copied. So the only thing which lets you maintain a bit of a moat might be network effects. But if you look at network effects, most network effects that exist in traditional companies, they're actively maintained. For example, Twitter cuts off people's access to their API because they know that if they do that, their competitors will build bridges. Now, we live in a world where people are building bridges between blockchains, people are building scalability solutions, people are building alternative chains. And so the value of the cost of running a dApp is going to, I think, quickly fall to the cost of actually running the competition on it. And so it's not going to be able to really capture a rent. So the idea that your platform is valuable because a lot of people are using valuable application, I think is not necessarily true. It could be that you have a lot of very interesting applications, but that might do nothing for your platform as a whole. What does, I think, maintain value for a platform is if you become some sort of store of value or sort of money, if you have a monetary premium, because unlike goods and services, increased demand for money does not actually make it less appealing. So that's a big difference with application. And that's a big difference with the application thesis. So I think dApps are useful insofar as they make your money more useful. So if you have a dApp for buying insurance, then that's great because now your money is more useful because you get directly to buy some form of insurance. So that's a positive thing, but only insofar as it helps the monetization of a cryptocurrency. And that's it. The idea that apps are interesting because they drive fees is, I think, misguided. I think it works in the short term. It doesn't work in the long term.
I mean, also you can see like a lot of dApps like moving from one chain to another. So it's, as you said, like a substitute aspect. I think they to tomatoes to cucumbers. That's
a lot of these dApps, they don't actually need the properties of the chain. A lot of these dApps, they don't actually need to have the censorship resistance that a decentralized platform gets them. What they want is basically automatic payment rails, and so it's easy for them to jump even on chains which only have a few validators, for example. In fact, I mean, if you look at the Cosmos project, for example, their entire point is to say, hey, maybe you just have a couple of validators for your chain. What you really care about is being able to talk to other chains. And so, I think that's interesting as a technology, but it doesn't make for a very good currency.
I see. And for Tezos, right? I mean, there's been a long history since 2017, but now, we have a future. I'm sure you're looking at a very longer term of the project goal in terms of like milestones and whatnot. But for you, like, what are some upcoming milestones that you personally want to tackle or you're working on that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think my goal is I want everyone to see that there is no technical innovation that will not eventually be folded into Tezos, that no one basically can maintain a technical competitive edge with a chain. And to be successful, there is more than just technology to be successful. I'm very well aware of that. But I think this should, I'm really looking forward to this being covered. So Tezos was, I think, the first major platform to have smart contracts and rely on proof of stake.
Right.
So that, I think, was a big that was a big achievement.
Mm-hmm.
There's another, and since then there's been a lot of proof of stake chains which have been launching or which are about to launch. And I would like to make sure that we don't let anyone basically pass us in terms of technology and so that means faster consensus. Like, I think now people are getting used to are going to get used to having finality in a few seconds. I think in Tezos you have statistically, with very, very high chance, something very, very close to finality in about 5 minutes, but people are going to be used to 5 seconds. So faster finality, more throughput. Tezos was not built as a high throughput blockchain. That was never an initial design goal, but people are demanding more throughput. Now, that said, I don't believe in the approach of like trying to put everything on the main chain. I love layer 2 solutions, but you still want to be able to onboard people into the layer 2. So you do need more throughput. So I would say a focus on this type of performance initially, and layer 2. We've seen a lot of designs for side chains, for example, for rollups. I wrote in 2017. A blog post saying, why isn't Tezos looking at sharding? And I said, well, sharding is extremely complex. Ethereum's talking about it, but they don't really have a concrete plan, and they're nowhere near having anything like sharding. And I think that was completely spot on for 2017. And the technique that I describe based on zero knowledge recursive proofs, well, now they call it ZK rollup, and they have a rollup-centric roadmap for scaling Ethereum. So it's I think it was a really good post, and I want to see some of these ZK rollup techniques deployed on Tezos sidechain techniques. There's many attractive ways to scale outside of the chain without compromising the decentralization. Tezos is probably one of the most decentralized blockchain there is out there today, and I think it's very important to preserve that and not sacrifice it for performance.
Oh. Wow. Yeah, I think the project definitely has a long-term goal, and it's like trying to perfect, I guess, like trying to improve day by day. So it's very impressive to see that. And yeah, I mean, like I was always curious, like just on a personal level, like, so it's such a big project that it's hard to like, basically know about every aspect of the project for you even. But what's your main, I guess, focus on the project? Like, what do you mainly work on, like in everything of the project? Like, for example, like, I don't know, like development, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah. I try to be a catalyst. So what I try to do is I hear people building things, and then they have questions. And oftentimes, someone will come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking of building this for Tezos. And I will say, yes. And since I spent most of my living hours thinking about it, I will say, yes, I've thought about that. And I have talked to that person who's thought about that. And I have talked to that person who's thought about that. So, all you three should really be talking together, because I know exactly what you're talking about, and these are the people to talk to. So I matchmake, I try to catalyze this type of things.
Ah, like a connector, among the ecosystem. Oh, yeah, that makes total sense. And yeah, the milestones are going to be definitely amazing for Tezos. I mean, do you look at like the 5-year, 10-year goal, like really long term? When do you think that blockchains will be able to be actually used? I mean, how long is it going to take, do you think? Just on a prediction.
It is actually used. I think people get confused. I think it depends, whose marketing documents you've read. If you read something that says that blockchain is going to back the backbone of the next social media wave, blah blah blah, or like blockchain is going to be the backbone of tracking lettuce around the world. I think it's not 5 years, it's not 10 years, it's never. Because it's not like you can't do it. It's just that there's no point in doing it. It's like I remember this joke. It was when they started, when the TSA in the US started like checking all the baggages, and they would stop people if they had like a small baby nail clipper. And the joke was that if you can take over a plane with a baby nail clipper, you can take over a plane without a baby nail clipper.
Well, that's good.
Like, if you can build a global system that can track all the food and ensure food safety with a blockchain, you can also do it without a blockchain. This is not really the part that helps you. But people are using blockchain today as a censorship-resistant store of value, and I think that is one of its main use. People are reluctant to see it as a use, but it is a use. People are making large cross-border payments with blockchain, and that is a use. So there's been so much promises. I think it harks back to 2014, where even Bitcoin finds were saying money is just the first app. So many applications are coming, and really, like, money is maybe the first app, but it's also the most important app. And I think when you ask why I'm skeptical of that, that's why money is the most important app. If you have other apps you can use with your money, that's great. But this is what this is about primarily. These are decentralized currencies, and that is the most important aspect of them.
Okay, that's definitely an important observation. And since the ICO in 2017, it was a massive ICO, right? It was very like one of the, I think, like a spotlights of that year. And since then, you went through this like huge challenge of like organizing this big ecosystem. But if there was something that you wish you could have done differently, what would it be?
There's so many things, so many different things. But honestly, my favorite ones are technological. If I can go back in time 6 years, and like I could give myself all the answers, like build it that way and build it that way, and use that technology and not that technology. Because anything you do, you see mistakes, and a lot of mistakes you don't even see because they're just like dead ends, and you just think for a long time. For example, I spent a lot of time obsessing over the long range attack problem in proof of stake. And I think we have something that's satisfactory in a sense that it says, well, if you have a long range attack in Tezos without economic consequences, and it has to be at least a 2-week long attack, meaning that you have some economic guarantees that the chain is unique so long as you're online once every 2 weeks. But I spent so much time focusing on that because everyone in the space was convinced that this was this very, very important problem. And if I could go back in time and say, actually, that is not a real issue. Like, that's not a real thing. You should not focus on that. I would have been like, all right. I had other ideas for consensus at the time that I abandoned, and they were actually like really good ideas that I had at the time. So I was like, no, you should pursue this. So frankly, like from the technological standpoint, so much thing to do differently. I think launch earlier would have been a good idea. Yeah. Because look, you have a self-amending blockchain, so you might as well use that and launch an MVP that self-evolves. Right?
That is true.
The other thing to do. I think part of the reason is that I've always wanted Tezos to be proof of stake from day one, not proof of work.
Right.
It would have been very, very easy. If like launching Tezos, like self-amending Tezos, proof of work with just payments and no smart contract, that could have probably happened in 2015. And I think that might have been worse doing, and then progressively upgrade the chain. Didn't do it like this. So they're useful only insofar as that you learn about the future. There's no point in like over what you do differently. It's like just don't try to make the same mistakes.
Right. it's a fun question, but I think some are curious about it. So it was from the community. That's why I'm asking the question as well. And recently you started posting YouTube videos and a lot of posts, and you're being more active in like communicating with the community. And do you plan to be more active on communicating in 2021? What's your plan?
I mean, I think I've always been active in communicating. I always tweet. I generally answer questions when people ask me questions on Reddit. So I would take exception to the idea that somehow have not been active, but I have not been active on my YouTube channel. And so yes, for the past few weeks, I have been active in my YouTube channel. Yeah, I'm trying to keep a rhythm. I'm trying to make like a few videos regularly. People seem to really enjoy them. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to keep making videos for a while because there's a lot of success, and I think the videos get maybe like 1,000 views only, but I've had feedback from some really cool people who watched the video and for whom it had an impact. So that makes a big. They're actually a lot more impactful than I might have thought when I was making them. So. Yeah, I'll continue to talk about it. If you if you have like topic ideas for things I should talk about in videos, let me know.
Oh yeah, I'm sure people will have some ideas, and it's more about the quality than the quantity, right? I mean, I think the views, the number of views don't really matter. It's about who watches the videos. So yeah, so please keep making them, and I enjoy watching some of them as well. And yeah, I mean
now you can see the technology behind the videos. The advanced technology in the videos.
Exactly.
It's too narrow. It's too narrow. I couldn't find a standard green screen that was white.
Well, I mean, it is what it is, right? You have to crop it. Yeah. Yeah. Just the eyeball. And last time you met, it was like a long time ago. I think it was like 2018. I think it was 2018.
Yeah, Korea. Yeah,
in Korea.
I can look it up if you want.
Oh, I mean, we were both talking at this event organized by Samsung Electronics, right? And you were basically educating these professionals about what Tezos is about, right? And from your perspective, right, what would be the best way to educate, I guess, and to share blockchain technology and why it's important about Tezos? Like, I mean, education is always a big issue, right? I mean, so what do you think is the best way to do that?
Well, like you said, it's about technology. So I think teaching the basics, understanding the basics of cryptography, the basics of distributed system. I think if people have a really solid understanding of the technology, that helps a lot. And then the other component, because it's very multidisciplinary. So there's one part cryptography, one part distributed system, but there's also a big part economics. And finance.
Right.
Just like having basic understanding of standard mainstream microeconomics goes a very long way.
Yeah, for sure. And for like enterprises like Samsung Electronics is a huge enterprise, right? Do you think, what do you think about the adoption of blockchain by these enterprises? Are you skeptic, or are you a proponent or a skeptic?
No, I think it's great. The more the merrier. I think we're going to see all sort of people adopt it. Be it from like individual users to enterprises to governments. My personal focus is on the individual, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the focus of the entire project. It's an open project. I like the idea of individual sovereignty. I like the idea of enabling people to be in control of their own money. But I also think that it's going, for any system to be successful, it has to be a big ecosystem with many different players in it.
Yeah, the more the merrier, as you said. Yeah, definitely. And finally, a lot of Asian communities watching the video. So could you share a short message to the Asian community or followers that like Tezos, like your project?
Well, I don't know that I have a message that would be specifically tailored to the Asian community as opposed to any other community. I did like enjoy a great deal when I had a chance to visit a little bit some Asian countries. I had the opportunity to meet Tezos community members when I was in Singapore, when I was in Korea, and when I was in Japan. I haven't had a chance to go to China. I haven't had a chance to go to Vietnam. There's so many other countries I would like to visit. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's been it's been a year which has not been very good for travel. But I'm looking forward to meeting as many people as possible when the world reopens.
Thank you. I mean, I also hope that we can reconvene in real life, and hope to see more of you in Asia, and hope to invite you someday as well. And thank you so much for your time and your brilliant work. And I look forward to hearing from you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.